Most of us grow up hearing the same quiet message. Fit in, follow the path, don't make waves. Just do what everyone else is doing, and life will somehow work itself out.
Yet, deep down, many people feel a constant tug that says, this can't be all there is. According to psychologists who study conformity, human beings naturally copy the behavior and beliefs of the people around them because it feels safer and more predictable. But that safety often comes at the cost of our individuality and long-term happiness.
So, in this story, imagine an ordinary person named Daniel, living in a small American town whose life looks normal from the outside.
He has a steady job he doesn't love, friends who think success is just about a bigger car or a slightly larger house, and a quiet feeling every Sunday night that the coming week will look exactly like the last one.
One day, Daniel gets invited to his high school reunion, and as he walks through the decorated gym, he realizes almost everyone has become a slightly older version of who they were at 18.
He hears the same jokes, the same fears, the same excuses about why they never had the chance to do what they really wanted, and it hits him harder than any motivational quote on social media ever could.
Later that night, he sits in his car scrolling through his phone and stumbles on a short clip where a speaker talks about how people often chase others' dreams instead of their own.
The idea that he might be living someone else's script instead of writing his own lands like a punch to the chest, and he can't shake it, even when he tries to distract himself with TV.
In the weeks that follow, Daniel starts noticing how much of his life is built around quiet conformity. The clothes he wears because he's afraid of being judged, the opinions he keeps to himself at work, the hobbies he never pursues.
Researchers who study regret say that at the end of life, people are more likely to regret the risks they never took than the ones they did. And that thought keeps echoing in his mind.
One evening, he finds an old journal from college filled with plans to write stories, travel, and mentor younger kids who felt lost, and he feels almost embarrassed by how big he used to dream.
That night, he draws a simple line down the center of a page, writing, "My life if I keep fitting in" on one side, and "My life if I dare to live different" on the other. And the side filled with question marks somehow feels more alive. Instead of trying to change everything overnight, Daniel starts small. Each morning, he spends 15 minutes alone, without his phone, asking himself, if I wasn't afraid of what people think, what would I do today? He forces himself to write honest answers, and over time, they start to repeat. He wants to write, to volunteer, to stop pretending he enjoys the same weekend routines that quietly drain him.
Motivational coaches often say that clarity comes from action, not endless thinking. So Daniel chooses one small step that feels different but not impossible. He signs up to read short stories at a local community center event. When he tells his friends, some laugh and say things like, "Since when are you a storyteller?" Or, "You know that doesn't pay the bills, right?" And for a moment, he almost backs out. But he remembers reading that when people start to change, others can feel threatened because it reminds them of the changes they're not making, and that thought helps him take their comments less personally. On the night of the event, Daniel's heart is pounding as he walks toward the front of the room, the microphone waiting under the lights. When he begins reading a simple story about a boy who chooses his own path instead of copying his friends, the room falls silent, and a few listeners slowly nod along. Afterward, a middle-aged woman quietly tells him she felt like he was telling her story, and an older man admits he always wanted to paint but thought he was too old to start. Driving home through the quiet streets, Daniel realizes that daring to live different isn't about chasing attention, but about honoring the voice inside you, even when no one else claps. Over the next year, he keeps his job but rearranges his life around what matters more deeply. Writing in the mornings, volunteering at a youth center, and exploring new places on the weekends. Some friends drift away because his changes make them uncomfortable,
But new relationships appear with people who care more about purpose than gossip. And he sees how environment can either trap you or help you grow.
A few years later, Daniel speaks at a community event about finding your path later in life, openly sharing how long he lived on autopilot and how freeing it felt to finally disappoint others instead of himself. He explains that daring to live different can mean telling the truth in a family that avoids hard conversations, protecting your health in a culture that glorifies burnout, or simply learning to say no when you were raised to always say yes.
He reminds them that fear never fully disappears, but courage grows as you act anyway. Measure success by who you're becoming instead of likes, and move your life in a direction that truly matters. In the end, Daniel invites everyone to imagine their future selves and take just one honest next step. Because daring to live different is less about being loud and more about being true.